Welcome back to the deep dive. We have been sorting through a truly monumental stack of sources on global political shifts.
A huge stack.
And today we are zoning in on one single massive democratic event. It happened in just one region of India, but it has sent these powerful shockwaves rippling all the way to Washington, London, and Beijing.
Yeah, this is so much more than just a local election. It's really a political tectonic shift inside the world's largest democracy.
It is.
And when we talk about magnitude, I think we have to set the scale for you right away.
Yeah.
We're analyzing the results from the state election in Bihar.
And the scale of Bihar, it's just almost impossible to grasp if you're thinking in, Western European or U.S. terms.
Not at all.
Bihar has a population of about 130 million people.
Wow.
Just let that sink in for a second. That one single state is demographically larger than Japan.
Than Japan or Germany or Mexico.
Exactly. It's almost 10% of India's entire population. I mean, this isn't really a state. It's practically a nation unto itself.
A very densely populated, hugely consequential nation-state within India. And they were holding elections for their state legislature, the Legislative Assembly, which has 243 seats.
So whatever happens there, it really does affect the fate of the entire Indian Union.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to cut through all the complexity, the regional names, the Indian politics. We need to really understand this Bihar result, figure out why this local contest matters so much for India's national stability, its development story. And most importantly, I think, we need to identify the specific factors, the policy, the demographics, the coalition strategy that led to a victory so massive it just shocked everybody.
It really did. And that shock, that's the punchline. That's why we're here. Prime Minister Modi's NDA, that's the National Democratic Alliance, they didn't just win.
No.
They pulled off a political landslide of historic proportions. They got a staggering 202 seats out of 243.
202 seats. I mean, when we first saw that number in the source material, it was genuinely hard to process, especially when you think about how narrow Modi's national majority was just last year.
Right.
To put that in context for you, this is like one political alliance winning, 3/4 of the state legislature in a super competitive place like Florida or Ohio.
And against a unified opposition, too.
Exactly. The opposition, the Mahagathbandhan or the NDA bloc, they were just decimated, left with just 35 seats between all of them.
It was a political crushing. But what makes this so fascinating and where we have to start our deep dive is the paradox that's kind of baked into this victory. We need to understand why a state election with a result like this has such immediate real-world implications far, far beyond its own borders.
Okay, let's unpack that global significance right now. We're jumping into section 1. The paradox of Bihar. Why a state election matters globally.
Bihar is just defined by its contradictions. Let's start with that demographic weight again, 130 million people. But the population is startlingly young. Our sources all show that well over half of the state's residents are under the age of 25.
And that's not just a number, is it? That's a political and economic pressure cooker.
A massive one.
I mean, this huge, young, aspirational population means that Bihar is basically shaping the future of the next 500 million Indians.
That's a great way to put it.
If you can figure out how to govern Bihar, how to provide jobs, education, manage that youth bulge, you've basically written the blueprint for the future of the world's most populous country.
Which makes Bihar sort of ground zero for development policy.
Exactly.
And that connects right into its national political weight. I mean, regardless of its economic status, Bihar is a political giant. It sends 40 members to India's national parliament in Delhi, the Lok Sabha.
40. In the U.S. system, that's like a huge block of votes from a swing state that decides who controls the House of Representatives.
Absolutely. Winning or losing Bihar fundamentally shifts the balance of power in Delhi.
But now let's get to the starkest paradox, and this is the one that fascinates economists and policy experts everywhere. Bihar is, statistically, still India's poorest state by per capita income.
Yeah, it struggles. It has low human development indices, the lowest literacy rates in the country, deep, deep poverty gaps.
Then yet, and this is the critical, just mind-boggling counterpoint. At the same time, Bihar has one of India's fastest-growing state economies.
It's incredible. Our sources repeatedly cite recent annual growth rates, in real terms, somewhere between 9 and 14%. Consistently.
9 to 14% annual growth. I mean, that's a rate that's well above China or any developed nation.
Right.
So you have this engine of just phenomenal economic expansion, but it's attached to this historically impoverished structure.
It's a living test tube.
It is. It's a test for whether India's economic model, high GDP growth plus massive infrastructure and these targeted welfare schemes, can it genuinely lift millions out of poverty?
And if it works in Bihar, it can work anywhere in India. But if it fails there,
The whole national development story faces a crisis of confidence.
and that confidence, that's where the global implications, particularly for the U.S. and its allies, they come right into focus.
Right.
Because the result in Bihar, this one-state election, directly impacts the stability of Prime Minister Modi's central government in Delhi.
Let's talk about that 2024 national context again, because it's so important here. In 2024, Modi's party, the BJP, they lost their solo majority.
They lost their ability to rule on their own, yeah. They dropped to 240 seats out of 543 in the Lok Sabha. They still lead the government, but they are now critically dependent on their allies to hold that federal NDA coalition together.
And who is the most crucial, maybe the most volatile and necessary ally in that coalition?
It's the JDU, the regional party based right there in Bihar, led by Chief Minister Nitish Kumar.
Okay.
And before this state election, the JDU was seen as potentially weak at home, which made them a very nervous partner on the national stage.
And a weak ally is a dangerous ally, right? They might switch sides, they might demand huge concessions.
Exactly. So a massive, overwhelming win in the Bihar State Assembly, where their alliance just crushed the opposition, that doesn't just give the JDU confidence.
It locks them in.
It locks them firmly into the coalition for the foreseeable future. It strengthens the entire NDA structure.
It's like a political stabilizing agent.
A hugely potent one. It reduces the risk of Modi's national coalition collapsing midterm because an ally feels threatened or decides to bolt. Stability in Bihar is basically a firewall against instability in Delhi.
And globally, that stability means India can act with more confidence as a key partner. I mean, when you think about the geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific, India is absolutely essential for counterbalancing China, for securing supply chains, for setting tech and climate norms.
And when a prime minister feels politically secure at home, boosted by these repeated crushing wins in massive states like Bihar, he just has so much more political capital and, frankly, room to maneuver on the world stage.
So domestic confidence drives a bolder foreign policy.
It absolutely does. The stability signal coming out of this Bihar landslide is a huge positive reinforcement for India's partners, who are counting on continuity and strength from Delhi.
That sets the stage beautifully. We know the stakes are huge, locally and globally. So now let's get into the weeds of the numbers. Section 2. The mechanics and the massive mismatch. We need to clarify the political structure, but more importantly, we have to solve this central riddle.
The riddle.
How can the opposition have the largest single-party vote share and still suffer such a catastrophic defeat?
Let's start with the structure, just to make it clear. India's system is parliamentary. So each state, Bihar included, has a legislative assembly.
Right.
They elect one representative per district using a first-past-the-post system.
So whoever gets the most votes in that district wins the seat, even if it's not an absolute majority.
Exactly.
That's pretty similar to most U.S. House races. But the critical difference, the thing that changes the whole game, is India's multi-party nature.
Correct. Coalitions are just the standard way of doing business. It is not a two-party system. In Bihar, you had two major umbrella alliances competing, and each of them was made up of multiple parties.
So define those alliances for us. Who was on the winning side?
The winners were the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance. At its core, you had two main parties, the BJP, which is Modi's national party, and a JDU, the Janata Dal United, led by the Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, who's the powerful regional face.
And they had smaller partners, too.
Oh, yeah. They pulled in several smaller, often caste-specific parties, just to broaden that umbrella.
And the opposition.
They were the Mahagathbandhan, which means Grand Alliance, and they're often called the India bloc nationally.
Okay.
This was led by the RJD, the Rashtriya Janata Dal, a very powerful regional party that's focused mainly on the Yadav caste and Muslim voters. And they were allied with the historic, but locally struggling Congress Party, the Gandhi's Party, and various left parties.
So pretty complex coalition on that side.
Very complex, and often a bit fractious.
Okay, so we have the two-headed monster of BJP JDU on one side versus this big, diverse coalition of opposition parties. Now let's look at the results, because this is where the mystery really starts.
Right. We know the NDA won 202 seats, overwhelmingly.
And within that, the BJP actually became the biggest single party in the state.
For the first time, yeah. They got 89 seats, just beating their ally, the JDU, which got 85.
Meanwhile, the opposition RJD, the main opposition, got a mere 25 seats.
Just 25.
25 seats. That number makes it sound like they were just completely rejected statewide. But then you look at the popular vote share and it tells a totally different story.
A completely different story. The RJD, the main opposition force, actually got the largest single-party vote share in the entire state. They clocked in at around 23%.
23%.
And the BJP.
The BJP was second at about 20.1%, and the JDU was close behind at 19.3%.
So if you add up the BJP and JDU votes, their coalition gets just under 40% of the total vote.
It's just under 40. And yet, that sub-40% coalition gets 174 seats just between those two parties, while the RJD, with the highest vote share, is completely marginalized with 25 seats. It's a massive mismatch.
It is. This really requires a deep analysis. How does a coalition with around 40% of the vote win 3/4 of the seats, while the largest single party statewide wins barely 10% of them?
This is the core data nugget, and the explanation is all about the mechanics of distribution. It's a phenomenon called vote fragmentation.
Okay.
And it's something you really only see in a first-past-the-post system when you combine it with a multi-party environment.
Let's use an analogy here to make this really clear for everyone.
Okay, good idea. Imagine we have 100 legislative seats to win. And in every single one of those 100 races, you have 4 major candidates.
Right.
Candidate A is from the NDA, and candidates B, C, and D are from the various opposition parties. Now, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that in every single race, candidate A gets 26% of the vote.
Okay, 26%. And candidates B, C, and D, they each get, say, 24%, 25%, and 23%.
So candidate A wins the seat every single time with just 26% of the vote, even though 74% of the people voted against them.
Exactly. In that hypothetical, candidate A, the NDA person, wins 100 seats. They get 100% of the legislative power, even though their statewide vote share is only 26%.
Meanwhile, the other parties, B, C, and D, with a combined 74% of the vote, they get 0 seats.
They get nothing. And that, on a much grander and more complex scale, is what happened in Bihar.
So the NDA won because they were just incredibly efficient. They coordinated their candidates, BJP and JDU, didn't run against each other, and they concentrated their votes exactly where they needed to be to get just enough to win in most of the districts.
That coordination was masterful. They figured out which party should run in which seat based on caste calculus, local strength, maximizing their chance to hit that 26 to 30% winning number.
And meanwhile, the opposition's votes were just fragmented.
Completely fragmented. The RJD's core base, the Congress vote, the left votes, they may have collectively beaten the NDA candidate in dozens and dozens of seats, but because their votes were split inefficiently between 3 different opposition parties, they lost those seats.
The NDA mastered the arithmetic, and the opposition just failed it catastrophically.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, that moves us perfectly into the analytical heart of this. We've established the math. Now, let's dig into the sociological and economic forces that allowed the NDA to consolidate those winning votes. Let's move to Section 3, decoding the landslide. The 3 pillars of NDA's victory.
This is where we go beyond the numbers and into the mindset of the voters. I mean, the victory wasn't just arithmetic. It was a whole socioeconomic strategy built on 3 interlocking pillars.
What are they?
Targeted welfare, the chief minister's brand of stability, and the masterful construction of a very broad social coalition.
Let's start with that first one. Pillar 1, which so many people are saying is the most transformative factor in modern Indian politics. Welfare politics and the women's vote. We've mentioned cash transfers, but let's go deep on this idea of the Laparthi bloc.
Right. The word Laparthi just means beneficiary, and it's become political shorthand for anyone who directly receives government welfare benefits.
Okay.
The NDA strategy, from both the state and central governments, was to target these benefits directly to women, treating them as their own distinct, crucial electoral bloc.
Why women specifically?
They realized that women are the primary financial managers of the household, especially in lower-income families.
Right.
So what specific schemes are we talking about here? What proved so effective?
The schemes are very tangible, designed to improve daily life. We're talking about cash transfers for starting a small business or buying a cow.
Subsidized cooking gas cylinders, the LPG, which replaces polluting firewood.
Housing subsidies for building a home, and famously in Bihar, that cycle scheme for high school girls.
Which fundamentally improved female mobility and their access to education. It was a game changer.
And what makes this welfare model so politically revolutionary is the delivery, right? This isn't your old school welfare bogged down in bureaucracy and corruption.
Not at all. This is where the digital infrastructure becomes so critical. They use something called the Direct Benefit Transfer System, or DBT.
Okay.
Using this trifecta of Aadhaar, which is a unique digital ID, bank accounts, and mobile phones, the government can deposit cash and subsidies directly into the beneficiaries' accounts.
So it digitally bypasses all those layers of corrupt middlemen and local party bosses who used to siphon off the money.
It cuts them out entirely.
Yeah.
So if you are a woman in a rural Bihar village, you know that the money or the gas cylinder that actually arrived came directly from the ruling alliance, unfiltered.
And that creates a powerful, very personal bond of loyalty.
It creates a sense of gratitude, of reliability, and the data here is just unambiguous. Bihar saw record female turnout in this election. And all the surveys, the exit polls, they strongly indicated that the NDA captured a massive and decisive share of that female vote. They prioritized tangible delivery over abstract promises, and the women of Bihar rewarded them for it.
So that powerful loyalty and visible delivery, that then feeds directly into Pillar 2, the stability and development brand of Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. He has been the face of the state in one way or another since 2005.
And he just secured his 10th term, which is a record.
So why does his image endure? I mean, Bihar is still fighting those poverty statistics.
You really have to understand the historical contrast. Nitish Kumar's entire reputation is built on one word: governance. Voters aren't comparing him to, Singapore. They're comparing him to the recent past.
Right.
The sources all bring up the period from the 1990s to the early 2000s, which is often called the Jungle Raj.
And what did that term Jungle Raj actually mean on the ground?
It was an era of just endemic lawlessness. Political kidnappings for ransom were rampant. Extortion was a way of life. The state machinery was seen as completely broken.
It's chaos.
Total chaos. Nitish Kumar's enduring appeal is that he restored a baseline of stability, of law and order. Voters credit him directly with reversing that narrative.
So even if you're still struggling economically, the fact that your daily life is safer, more predictable, that carries immense political weight.
Immense.
And what are the visible, tangible achievements that back up this development brand?
The visible infrastructure is key. Our sources cite huge, measurable expansions in roads, connecting villages that were previously cut off. Even more critically, electricity. 15 years ago, Bihar had some of the lowest electricity access in all of India. Today, it's not perfect, but saturation is dramatically higher. You have consistent power in homes, businesses, schools.
And those kinds of changes, a working road, reliable lights, those aren't abstract policy debates. They are immediate, life-altering improvement.
Precisely. And they also focused heavily on social infrastructure, like girls' education. That cycle scheme we mentioned, it wasn't just welfare. It was a tool to boost female school enrollment and retention rates.
So the NDA's political pitch is basically, we may still be poor, but you can see the progress, you have law and order, and we are moving forward.
Exactly. And the opposition struggled mightily to counter that narrative of continuous visible improvement.
Okay, let's turn to that final pillar, which is probably the most intricate piece of the puzzle. Pillar 3, the broad social coalition versus narrow identity politics. And this all centers on caste.
It does. And caste, for a global listener, you have to understand it as this complex inherited hierarchy. It blends social status, traditional occupation, and political identity. It's much more layered than just race or class.
Right.
And the success of the NDA was stitching together this incredibly complex cross-caste coalition that spoke more to aspirations and welfare than just historical grievances.
So which groups formed the bedrock of this winning coalition?
The NDA successfully united 5 key segments.
Yeah.
First, their traditional base, the upper castes. Second, the numerically significant non-Yadav, other backward classes, or OBCs. Third, and this is the most critical part for the JDU, the extremely backward classes, or EBCs. Fourth, a big chunk of the Dalits. And fifth, those women beneficiaries that cut across all of these groups.
Let's focus on that EBC segment, the extremely backward classes. Why are they so crucial?
Well, the EBCs are a huge number of smaller, often poorer caste groups within that larger OBC umbrella who were historically marginalized, even by the dominant OBC groups.
I see.
In Bihar politics, the RJD opposition drew massive strength from the Yadav caste, which became very politically dominant in the 90s. The JDU, led by Nitish Kumar, strategically focused on the EBCs as a direct counterweight.
That's fascinating. So it's a political move to identify this underutilized, numerically powerful group that feels alienated from the main opposition base.
Exactly. The EBCs are numerous, and because they aren't a single monolithic group like the Yadavs, their votes were seen as transferable and loyal to the party that actually delivered benefits to them. So by giving EBCs recognition, quotas, and visible access to power and welfare, Nitish Kumar successfully carved out this massive support bloc that directly undercut the opposition's identity narrative.
So the NDA built this broad social umbrella that was just insurmountable.
It proves to be, yeah.
And this brings us right to the opposition's weakness. Because despite their high vote share, the NDA bloc, the RJD, Congress, the left, they failed because they stayed trapped in that narrow identity politics.
That's right. The RJD's base, while incredibly loyal, remained too heavily concentrated among the Yadavs and Muslim groups. And while those two groups together are powerful, they are not enough to win a majority of 243 seats.
Which is not enough.
The 2025 result is just a definitive statement that relying on one or two dominant identity groups without a compelling cross-caste message is a losing strategy in a big, diverse state like Bihar.
And how did their messaging fail? I mean, what were they saying that voters were just tuning out?
They lacked a clear, persuasive, alternative economic program. Voters were getting cash, seeing new roads, feeling safer. The opposition's message was often focused on these complex critiques, like alleged manipulation of institutions or past historical grievances.
And a lot of generalized anti-Modi rhetoric, right?
A lot of anti-Modi rhetoric focusing on national politics. So they were arguing about the sanctity of the Constitution or corruption in Delhi, when the average voter in Bihar was focused on whether they had electricity and cash in their bank account.
Right, the kitchen table issues.
Precisely. The opposition's anti-incumbency message just failed to translate into a practical, aspirational vote for change. The key question for the voter wasn't, are they corrupt, but will the opposition do a better job of making sure my daughter gets a bicycle or my family gets reliable electricity?
And the NDA had a 15-year track record of tangible delivery on that.
They did. And the opposition just lacked credibility on that front. They couldn't move beyond their core identity base to address those Laparthi beneficiaries.
That gives us an incredibly clear picture of the strategy. So we need to transition now to Section 4, where we analyze the state of democratic health in Bihar and what this result means for India's national future.
The Bihar election presents this study in democratic duality. On one hand, you have incredible procedural strength and enthusiasm.
Right.
Our sources confirm a record turnout of 67.1%, the highest in Bihar's history. The Election Commission managed a very smooth process, no major repolling needed, so at the grassroots, the democratic impulse is vibrant and massive.
But that smooth procedure is set against this backdrop of really serious contested fairness issues that the opposition was raising. We can't ignore the controversy over the electoral roll.
No, you can't. This is the modern democratic battlefield. Before the election, there was a major procedural issue. Nearly 6.5 million names were deleted from the electoral rolls in Bihar.
6.5 million.
Yeah. The official line was that this was just a necessary cleanup of duplicates and deceased voters.
And what were the allegations from the opposition and civil society groups?
The allegation was that this deletion process disproportionately targeted the poor, migrants, and minority voters groups that are generally perceived as leaning against the ruling alliance.
So the speed and the scale of it raised serious concerns.
It raised serious concerns about whether the election process was being subtly manipulated through bureaucratic means.
So on one side, you have this massive enthusiastic participation rate, which suggests a healthy democracy.
Right.
But on the other, you have allegations of systemic attempts to manage who gets to participate.
It's a textbook case of a high turnout democracy coexisting with these deep disputes over integrity. And this isn't unique to India. It mirrors the intense debates in the U.S. over gerrymandering, voter purges, restrictive ID laws.
So the battleground is shifting.
It's shifting from simple fraud to the complex procedural integrity of the voting system itself. And the Bihar 2025 results show that even in a landslide, these fairness disputes don't just disappear, they become the lingering concern.
Okay, let's move to the policy implications. The scale of this NDA victory, it serves as a profound validation for that specific policy model we talked about. What does this outcome signal for policy across India?
The message is just unambiguous. The welfare plus growth policy mix is the winning strategy, and they are going to double down on it nationwide.
Right.
The central government will certainly continue to couple massive public infrastructure spending, roads, rail, digital services, with this highly targeted welfare delivery, specifically using direct benefit transfers.
So we can expect the national budget to reflect this more and more, especially targeting that female voter bloc.
Absolutely. The Bihar result reinforces the political intelligence that treating women as a unified critical electoral bloc is immensely successful. Expect the central government to expand the scope and scale of DBT, focusing on schemes that benefit women and ensure immediate tangible improvement in household life.
The Laparthe strategy is now firmly entrenched as the BJP's main electoral tool.
It is. The success wasn't just in designing the welfare. It was in the seamless digital execution that minimized the political risk of corruption.
Okay, now let's zoom out one last time for the global signals. What does this mean for international observers, financial markets, strategic partners?
Well, first, the legitimacy signal is very powerful. After the reduced national majority in 2024, there were these inevitable international questions about Modi's political longevity, his grip on power.
Sure.
A clear, crushing win in a politically demanding state like Bihar effectively silences those doubts, at least for the near future. It sends a message of decisive political dominance.
And that stability directly affects economic confidence and policy continuity.
It stabilizes the policy environment, which is crucial for foreign investment.
Sure.
A politically secure central government, supported by strong state allies like in Bihar, is far more likely to pursue long-term, ambitious economic reforms. So for U.S. and global firms watching India, this reduces uncertainty around things like defense manufacturing, semiconductor fabs, digital trade policy, all things that need long-term political guarantees.
And finally, the Indo-Pacific context. When we talk about India as a strategic counterweight to China, how does the Bihar result factor into that?
It reinforces the central government's ability to act decisively without being constantly distracted by domestic politics. When India's partners look at this ability of the government in Delhi, a crushing state win like this indicates political confidence and cohesion within the ruling alliance.
So while local elections don't determine military strategy,
They confirm the domestic political security of a leader who is making those high-stakes geopolitical decisions. It confirms political continuity.
that brings us to our final synthesis. It's been a really deep dive into an enormously complex event. For you, the listener, let's try to boil this down to the three most important takeaways.
Okay, the first and most immediate takeaway is just pure political math. The sheer scale of this NDA victory provides crucial short-term stabilization for Prime Minister Modi's national coalition.
It empowers his allies and reduces the risk of a national crisis.
Exactly.
The second takeaway is the strategic blueprint for how elections are now won in India.
Right. The victory was achieved through this precise modern combination of targeted digital welfare delivery specifically aimed at women, the Laparthe bloc.
Combined with that, it's a dizzying story. High-speed growth, high political drama, effective welfare, and persistent poverty all at once. We've covered the what and the why of the landslide. Now, as we always do, we want to leave you with one provocative final thought to consider, connecting this result back to Bihar's foundational paradox.
Okay, so we've established that Bihar is both India's poorest state and its fastest growing, with growth rates hitting, 9 to 14%.
Right.
The 2025 result proves that visible infrastructure, law and order, and sophisticated welfare delivery can generate immense political success. It can temporarily overpower critiques about deeper issues like corruption or institutional integrity. Voters rewarded tangible benefits.
But the essential long-term question for India's development model is still unresolved. The political success is undeniable, but the ultimate test case is whether this phenomenal economic growth can actually close the massive human development gaps.
Can it lift 130 million people out of poverty, improve literacy, fix the health deficits, before the election cycle demands another wave of short-term welfare transfers?
So, is the political validation of 2025 based on real structural transformation?
Or are the direct benefit transfers just papering over deep structural issues that the state's high growth rate is not fundamentally solving?
So you're saying keep an eye on Bihar's human development metrics, not just its GDP growth, as the true measure of success.
That is the global test case for India.
A deeply consequential political event, and one that required this kind of detailed analysis. Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.